Hi, my name is Noah Gift. What we're going to talk about today is build systems. First, we're going to start out with GitHub Actions, one of the most popular third-party build systems available, and we're going to go through how to set it up, test your code, and that's really the foundation for later doing continuous delivery. Next, I'm also going to show how to do the same thing on AWS using their build system, which is called AWS Code Build. And it's really nice to be able to compare the two different systems and say, here we go, here's what most people use with GitHub Actions, but you can also do the same thing by using cloud-native build servers. The whole YAML configuration file looks similar, and this feedback loop also allows you to later do things like push containers or push your serverless application into the cloud. Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this action section here. And this is a really great service now that comes with GitHub. You can build, test, and deploy your code, and you can even do it in code reviews, branch management. So really, they're really excelling here in terms of building systems out. We're going to go ahead and say set up workflow yourself here. And notice when I first do a main.yaml workflow that basically what this does is it controls when the workflow will run. You can do push requests, pull requests, and in this case, the type of runner that the job will run on, Ubuntu latest, and then we'll go ahead and say echo hello world here, and run a multi-line script. So really, this is just kind of a hello world example. What I'm going to do is actually build out a more realistic one. So I'm going to go back to my other GitHub account here, and let's just take a PyTest example. Here we go. GitHub Actions PyTest. And inside of here, notice the way it gets set up is every workflow gets set up as .github/workflows, and then you can put as many of these as you want. You could have things that test certain things in Python, or things that build containers. Like you can, synchronize code to locations. There's really a bunch of things that you can do. I'm going to go ahead and select this and make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to just copy this code here. So if we go to this location, I'm going to just say Control A, paste it in. And then we can, instead of main.yaml, maybe what I can do is just say continuous integration. There we go. And then I'm going to start commit and say, created CI file that tests, lints, and installs. There we go. And then once I do this, what's nice about it is immediately, if I click on actions, it will go through here and it'll build this out, right? So continuous integration, great. We got this running. So this is really setting up the foundations of DevOps, right? The first pillar of MLOps. And so why this is so cool is that now I have this cloud-based system, going through here and automatically doing all these actions for me every single time I make a change. So how can we test this out? Well, let's take this, create the status badge, copy it, and then go to the README file and paste it in. So we can start to kind of build this out more and make it a little bit cleaner. Here we go. We can say this. There we go. Python application test with GitHub Actions, MLOps from 0. There's an MLOps repo. Great, perfect here. Now notice every time I make a change, it automatically triggers a new build. Now this is just a README file change, so it's not going to do anything different. But what if I want to make a change to the source code itself? Well, let's go back to this environment here, the MLOps environment. And if I go inside, we could do a get pull. This will pull a few files in. And so we can see the GitHub Actions here, right? They're all edited. And then also I could go back to my hello file here and just maybe tweak this. Like let's go ahead and test out what happens if I add that silly stuff, right, that we did before, and if I say get status, it's going to say there's a change. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. And there we go. We'll say adding a hello file change that breaks the code or breaks the build. And then we'll go ahead and say push. Okay, so if I go back to the Cloud Shell environment, to the GitHub environment here and click on actions, you can see adding hello file change that breaks the build. Perfect. There we go. Set up Python 3.8, install dependencies. Now I got a problem, right? And so this is the whole point of continuous integration, is that it can spot problems before they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And in this particular example here, we can say assign the same variable var to itself, assigning variable, well, this is not good. What do I do? Well, let's fix it in another environment. So let's go back to code spaces here, and let's go through and build that out. So how can we do this? Well, we can just do, again, a get pull. And what I would probably do typically is run a make all, let's just make sure everything's working. We got a problem. Maybe this is another developer, a senior developer on the team. Okay, let's go ahead and fix this, right? We go through here. We say make test, make lint, see if it works. Okay, we fixed it. Let's go ahead and say get status, get add hello, commit this, adding fix to broken lint. Right. So this is really the life cycle here, and why the DevOps component is so critical. We go back again to the build system. It's going to build yet again. There we go, adding broken fix to lint. And we have a whole history of every single thing that's occurring in our project. And again, this is the life cycle of continuous integration. So this, if we go back to this, let's go here. This foundational component of DevOps is why it's so important. And the continuous delivery is important because you have to have the ability first to automatically have testing to then get your code to the point where it can be deployable into production. So this is, again, a foundational component of what it is we need to work on. And then if I do say get pull, I can see in this environment it works as well. So we've got everything working. Now there's another way that we can run our code in a build server that I want to show as well, which is you can do this in AWS. So if we go to AWS console here, not sure why that is happening, but what I want to do is use a build server that they have called Code Build. And so it's very similar to the GitHub Actions system. And so we can also do cloud build type activities using the AWS service. So if I go here and I say cloud build project, I can say, project name here and just say, this is a cloud, build test right here. And we can go ahead and say, enable build badge right here. And I can do similar things. So I can say, this is a cloud-based build project. And I can start to walk through really kind of a similar workflow as GitHub Actions here. So let's go ahead and look at the source code provider. Notice in AWS, you could actually use their code builds, their source code management system. You could even tell it to look for things inside of S3. But this is just a kind of a generic build system here. And if I go through here and I say GitHub, and I say public repository, that inside of this public repository or a repository in my GitHub account. So I'm going to go ahead and go for my GitHub account here, and I'm going I'm going to add this other repo, which is this right here. And we go through to this repository and we click on this, and I can say, for example, this URL, go back to, sorry, let's just kind of move these so they're all close to each other. Move this, I can do this, perfect. And this should give us, perfect. We've got that hooked up in there. And also, this is just worth pointing out is that if you ever wanted to do submodules, sometimes that's necessary. You would have to select this. And then this one is another point is, do you want to rebuild this every single time a change is pushed to the repo? Sure. Let's go ahead and rebuild this. And then in this particular environment here, we could actually ask for only specific types of events, or we could just default and it'll do it every single time it's going to change. Now, the other thing that's pretty neat about, the AWS build service is a lot more tailored to the AWS environment. And so if you are doing like really, really heavy customized AWS stuff, then this would be a great environment to build things out. So notice I'm going to say I want to use one that's managed by AWS, although I could use a custom Docker image. And then if I go to Amazon Linux 2, that would be the best choice because Amazon Linux 2 is the recommended. And so this one says the programming languages are now included in the standard image, which is recommended. So if you wanted to use Ubuntu 18.04, you could do that. I'm going to say standard image. I'm going to say Amazon Linux Code Build standard 3.0. We'll use the latest one. And then great. If we go through here, we can say new service role account. And this service role account, if I needed it to do some kind of a deployment, then maybe I would actually add some additional powers here inside of the service role account, or you give it to an existing service role. In this case, it doesn't need to do anything because I'm just going to test my code, but I'm going to go through here and just leave that. And then now this is the other thing that you can do is you can say, hey, do I want to use a build spec file to store my commands, or do I want to just insert my commands inside of here? So let's go ahead and try this out. Let's see if we can get this to work. I'm going to switch to an editor, and look, I can just put some build commands inside of here, right? So I can just say, here's like a full config here, and I can just take all this stuff out. We don't want this. And then we can go and like, this is very similar, right, to what I was doing before, right? Is there's these different builds commands here. And so I'm going to go ahead and say, get rid of, we have the phases here. We have the build. We can get rid of all this. It can build reports. It can do all these things. I would say this looks good. We can go ahead and say install, and then put a command here like this. And then this is where I would put in the make install command. So I would say make installs. And maybe that's what we do first is let's see if we can get anything to work. Phases install commands. In fact, we could add another. Let's comment this out and let's just see if we can get this thing working here. So let's just first get the installation working, and then we'll go ahead and say create build project. So the idea here is that there are multiple kinds of build systems that you can use. Github Actions might be one that you want to use because it's really quick and dirty. If you're doing really heavy AWS work, you may want to actually do that as well, where you use the native tools here. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and tail logs. Perfect. And let's go ahead and see what happens. So first phase, download our code. And remember, we only told it to do an installation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this installation. There we go. Does look promising. It does look like, let's go ahead and see what it's doing. So there we go. Installation succeeded. Perfect. Great. So we're able to get this working. In fact, we could look at the phase details here, and we could look at all the different aspects of the project. So what I can do next here, if I wanted to, is edit the build spec file, right? Because remember, we were here, and we could add some other commands. So let's go ahead and add another phase. So we'll add a phase so we can get rid of all these comments here. So we have an install phase. Let's go ahead and name this phase a lint phase, and then we'll put our command in. And this is the beauty of the make file, as well as it makes it really simple to do a make install. Make install. And there we go. And then let's add the second command, the final command here, which is test. Now, if you wanted to do a deploy, it would fit perfectly, right? Especially if you're deploying the AWS code. So we'll go ahead and we'll say deploy, and we'll go commands, and we'll go here. No, I'm sorry, test. We'll do test, not deploy. We'll do test. And then we'll do a make test. Perfect. Make test. There we go. So we got this thing working. Insert build commands. We're going to go ahead and update the build spec, and we'll go ahead and start the build. And now let's see if it does all three phases of the continuous integration like we had before. And notice it also tells you the build number, right? So we've got the build number. Lets us go through and configure different iterations, right? So every time I run, I can keep a track of maybe how many changes were made to the repository, which is pretty nice. Notice I can also look at it in real time. I can tail these logs here, and there we go. It's phase context. Invalid space. Build spec phase test, expecting build, install, post build, and pre-build. Okay, so it doesn't want that. That's no problem. We can fix that. So it likes these phases. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the syntax that they want, and so I'll go back to my test project here, edit it, go to the build spec, and I'm just going to put these all inside of here. So we can even put this together. I can say install lint test, and we'll just put them one by one, right? So every build system's a little bit different, and you just have to be flexible to play with it to make sure that you are able to adjust when it gives you a new wrinkle. So here we go. I believe this will work. So we'll say install lint test. That works. Let's go ahead and update it. Let's run it again. And now when it's running, I can again just tail it, and we can just watch it and see what happens. Okay, it's downloading the source code. Failed again. We have some kind of another error. Let's go ahead and take a look at this, which is pretty normal when you're playing around with a build system. Download source failed. That's strange. Let's go ahead and see if we can view the entire log. I'm sorry, or tail the log. Yeah, not sure why that's causing some issues. YAML file. Invalid. Expecting build. So you can't do that. I keep trying to make this thing too tricky. So we just need to call this build. That's fine. We'll just call this build. So here, edit this build spec. So this is normal. I guess that's one of the nice things about this is you can see that it's normal to get into troubles where you try to get too fancy and then the system doesn't like it. So let's try our third time's the charm here, I think. Provisioning our code. It's going to look that the build steps that it expects are actually set up here. And then we should be able to get the continuous integration working. Okay, now it's in the build phase. There we go. We got the installation, running command, make install. That's great. Okay, and now it did that. It did the test as well. That's great. And it also did the lint. There we go. So we got the whole thing working. Awesome. We also can put the, I believe if we go back to this project, it's got I thought I had like a little, yeah, here we go, copy badge URL. So we can go to this repo and just give it, it's double badge. We have two Boy Scout medals here. We can go here and put this in as well. And I believe what you do is you make it some kind of an icon. Let's see if this works. If we do that, and we put this in here where we can say, build status, AWS. Let's try that. And what does that do? There you go. AWS Code Build. Pretty cool. It's cool to have two merit badges here. Like, I don't know why there's an extra line there, but not too worried about it. I don't know why that's there, but good enough. We have Github Actions working and we have Code Build working, which is pretty cool because now I could later build this into the deployment phase for what my project needed to do. So this is a great spot to kind of move into a little bit more of heavy lifting. So this is continuous integration, but what about now doing DevOps? I'm sorry, doing MLOps, right? So how would we get this thing going? Well, I think the first thing to do would be to shift gears here and look at the MLOps cookbook recipe. So I'm going to go to MLOps cookbook right here, and notice that it's got many of the same capabilities, right? Like, but there's a few differences here. So one is that there's more workflows, right? So I have this workflow, which is goes through and does what I was just talking about earlier. It does an installation, it does a lint, it does a test, but it also has the ability to build a container. And it may be worth just, walking through what a container is, how to set it up, and how we could actually test that thing out. So in order to do that, what we could do is actually just check out this project. And so before I check it out though, and run it on AWS, let's walk through what I would consider as a reasonable approximation for an MLOps like setup. Now that we've got continuous integration mastered, I think it's a good idea to have a notebook that shows how the data science part of your project works, which is this one. This is sitting here. We'll go into this in a little bit. Also, a Docker file, which in this case, the Docker file just declares what I want to have inside of a container, which in a container is just a kind of a very similar to a process where you're able to actually tell this specific runtime that you want to package in some Linux executable code plus your application source code. And then we have a README file that describes what's happening in the project. We have an application. This would be the microservice, which we'll get into in a second. And this would serve out the predictions. And then we have a command line tool, which I also think is really critical to build command line tools so that you can rapidly, prototype things. And then we also have a library that handles machine learning code for us. So this can do things like, import the pandas library, scale data for me, do some training if I wanted to do it. So it's all in here, like handy little functions that I can refer to when I'm building out projects. And then finally, if you notice here, this is a nice prediction file. This prediction file gives us the ability to just run a bash command, and this bash command could do a serve out an HTTP call for me. There we go. There's utils CLI, and what this thing does is retrains a model, and this one right here does a prediction. So that's kind of the structure here of what would happen. There's also a machine learning model. You can also refer to this. This is a good description, right? Here's all the assets: makefile, requirements file, command line tool, app, library, some raw data, the model itself, Docker. So I'm going to go ahead and play with this a couple different ways. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use Docker itself, and I'm going to actually just play around with this project. So I think a good place to play around with that might be to test it out on GitHub, in GitHub Codespaces. So I'm going to go ahead and CD up here one level, and I'm going to clone the repo. No, actually, I'm not going to clone the repo. I'm just going to pull this image, and I'm going to pull it right here. And so what Docker pull does is it takes like the entire application, the runtime, everything, the model, and just allows me to just run it without knowing anything about the code at all. So it's basically like essentially a completely packaged up microservice. Now that I've got that running, I can literally just run it by first looking through here and say Docker image ls, and going, oh, okay, here's my Docker container. That's great. And why don't I go in here and actually play around with this a little bit? And now, how would I do this? Let's go through my instructions, and we'll scroll down. Here we go. You can run a containerized service. That looks good. And so in order to do that, we would want to do something kind of like this. I would want to do a Docker build. So I'm sorry, Docker run. So I'm going to go ahead and use this command here and go over to this environment. And I just need to change the name here. So if I say Docker run, I'm going to say I want it to run locally port 8080. And then I want to change the name of the file to the one that's locally to my machine. So I'm going to go ahead and change that out. Right. So basically run on localhost, which is port 127.0.0.1, 8080. Let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. And now if I run this, no, look at that. I didn't have to do anything at all. No code, nothing. It's running a machine learning application. And in theory, this would work in a browser. Let's see. There we go. It works in a browser, which is also pretty cool. That's one of the great capabilities here of GitHub Actions. But what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to make another terminal. So notice here, if I go to the plus icon in GitHub Codespaces, I just need to go ZSH. And now I just can give it a payload. Now, if I go back to this project here, what I need to do is do a prediction payload. And I have a bash script that makes it easier for me. So let's go through here and notice I have a predict.sh. It's just, I just don't want to write the curl command. I'm lazy. And so I'm going to go over to this environment and I'm going to say touch predict.sh. There we go. And now you see this file here. I'm going to paste that in. There we go. And notice, let's just walk through what this does. This just says, hey, it's a bash script. And I can even do this. I can say chmod plus x. And what happens here is that it exposes port 8080 and it allows me to actually do a prediction command where I put in this particular machine learning model, I pass in the weight, that which is 200 pounds, and it'll show me what the height should probably be. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and do predicts. There we go. Port 8080 prediction, and look, it returns back a prediction. It says you're most likely, if you're a Major League Baseball player, if you weigh 200 pounds, you're probably 6'2", and you probably your height would be 73.61 inches. So it's kind of rounding this off a little bit here. So this is what's awesome about containers, is that this code does not exist in my local environment. I just pulled it down so I can give it to other people. And even further, and let's stop this and see how this is running right here, like this. I can actually just look at the logs as well, and it'll show me what's going on. But I can kill this process and just show that inside of GitHub itself. So if I go back to, let's go here, let's close this one. Yeah, if I go to GitHub, notice what's awesome about this is that these containers are like another flavor of continuous integration, because as part of my build process, not only are we doing what I did before, but look at this. It can go through and says, hey, go ahead and using Docker containers, log into the container registry on GitHub, go ahead and refer to ghsr.io and build this out, and then let's push this into production. And what's awesome is that now every time I make a change to this project, it's going to build a new container, and then someone that's on my team, they just go through here and they check it out and pull it. So this is really the advantage of containers. It's just really, really awesome way to play around with code and to deliver it. And you can, again, programmatically do it every time you build your project. So what's awesome about this thing is that it's a beautiful workflow for doing MLOps, right? A container is really a great fit for doing MLOps. So let's also take this repo and let's now go to our AWS Cloud9 environment and let's check it out. Let's kind of kick the tires a little bit here. So I'm going to copy this, and notice this has nothing in there. So I'm going to cd into a new directory here, and then I'm going to say git clone, and I'm going to clone in this new repo. And let's try what we did before. Let's do the old let's do the make install here, right? So make install. So cd into the repo and say make all. And now what's awesome about a make all is that the make all command will give us really the whole kitchen sink, right? Let's test my code. Let's lint my code. Let's make sure that everything is installing correctly, and let's do it on the AWS platform. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this. And what happens? Does it run? Okay, it's looking good. Perfect. It looks like we've got linting now tested, and there we go. So we can go and perfect. We got all these unit tests passing. So we've now validated this project as well, a full MLOps project on our AWS platform. And then we could, if we wanted to, even push this into a container that lives on AWS. So let's, from here, go a little bit further and just keep going, right? And go to Code Build again. And remember how we did this before? We tested another project. Now let's take a more rich project that has a lot more stuff cooking, like more libraries, more different aspects, and let's build a new one. So let's go here again, say create a build project, and we're going to call this MLOps cookbook. And this will be test a realistic MLOps project and deploy, so test the ML project on AWS, right? Because this eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to take this code and deploy it into the AWS cloud. And so in order to do that, we're going to need to at least at first verify that the AWS environment is good for it. And so I'm going to again enable a build badge here. That's awesome. And then now the source provider, we'll go through here. We'll say GitHub, perfect, repository in my account. And now this will again ask me what the name of the repo is. We'll just put this in. There we go. Put this in. Great. We can leave all this default. Let's rebuild it every time a change is made. And let's do the same thing we did before. So again, you could, this is definitely a really interesting option if you have a very specialized environment, but we're going to do managed image here. We're going to say Linux 2. We're going to say runtime standard. We're going to use the latest version of Amazon Linux. And then we also don't need to do anything yet. So I'm going to say, sure, we'll create a new service role. And then again, we'll do this really cool thing that they did before, which is we're going to insert the build commands. Now, we've learned a little bit from last time, which is that it's probably going to build a lot faster if we just cut to the chase here and actually only use the phases that it likes, which is, we know it likes build, so we'll go ahead and do that. And let's just take this out. Let's go here. There we go. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to copy. We could actually do 4 things. I think we can do, we can say make install. So install the software. We can do make lint the software. And then we could do make format our code. And then we could say make test. Actually, let's do format at the end, and let's do test at the beginning. There we go. Like that looks pretty good. Install our code, lint it, test it, format it. And all the format does is just, it doesn't change it and push it back into the code repo. It just shows if there was some formatting I would need to do in the future. There we go. We'll scroll down here and let's create the build project. So if we get lucky, this time we learned our lesson from before, and we can automatically deploy this thing. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, this looks like we're ready to go. Let's go ahead and look at the progress here. Let's look at the tail of the log files. Okay, so it's going to provision it. It's now in the build phase. And if we get lucky, it'll be able to install, lint, test. Okay, install is good. We got that. That's a great sign. And now let's go to the next phase, which is right here. That looks good. All right, here's a make lint command. Perfect. Now in the finalization, perfect. And now we can do a format, right? So awesome. We got this whole thing. It's successful. And then I also can do the same thing, right? I can go through here and I can look at this project MLOps cookbook, copy the build badge, go back to this project and kind of make it look a little fancier. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's paste this in, and we'll just copy this, steal this first part here. And we'll call this test with AWS Code Build. There we go. Perfect. So this is really the reason to do this is to get kind of prove that you can each of these environments that would be the potential deploy target, we've got it flushed out. So in this case, this would be testing the container getting pushed here, but we could later push this to other targets.